evening and welcome to the January 14th, 15th meeting of the Downtown Park Task Force. We're glad you're all here this evening. We have a relatively short agenda, but a number of important issues to decide at this meeting, held over from our meeting last month. We have a pretty tight agenda tonight, but we also have an opportunity for public comment at the beginning before we make any decisions. So we will move right into the agenda with the approval of the minutes from the December 18th meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tim.
Support. It's a whole lot of letters.
Supported. Is there any discussion or any corrections to the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Next on our agenda are any city commission comments. Commissioner Douglas is not here this evening. She's celebrating her 25th wedding anniversary in someplace not here, which is very good. Commissioner Dubuck, any comments at this point?
Oh, I think I'm good right now. Thanks.
Okay. I do not either, not at this point. We will then move into public comment. Public comment is basically the same rules as public comment for the city commission. You get about 3 minutes. Direct your comments to the group as a whole and not to anybody individually. And with that, we will recognize anyone in the audience who would like to comment.
Say anything?
Yes, Mr. Wendland, I see your hand.
My name is John Wendland. I live at 703 Irving. I've been here around 86 years, like I said at the commission meeting Monday night.
Can't hear. Mr. Wendland, can you pull the microphone? There you go.
How's that? You can hear me now?
I think that's much better.
Okay. I know I'm on the short side here, but
I understand perfectly.
okay. On Monday night, I want to emphasize what I said on Monday night, and that is I have 180 reasons why I want this to leave the war memorial as is. And these men that gave our lives, we gave them this spot, this city, the people. We did that some years ago, 2006. Now we want to take it away, or maybe take it away. I think we should just leave it as is. Give them their space. They paid in full. And besides, if we want to move it 40 feet over there, to me, that don't make any sense. That's cost a lot of money to move it again. The fourth time this war memorial has been moved. And not only leave it alone, keep the green space. We need the green space to make it nice and soft and a comfortable place for the loved ones to come and think about what the loved one did for them. And besides, I have an uncle that's on it's on the war memorial. He gave his life back in the First War. That's Frank Wendland. I think about them more than anybody else. And if you do leave it as is, I hope that you make the right decision tonight. Take care of it. Keep the landscape up. You guys had really done a bad job of maintaining it. You tear up something and leave it tore up for the whole year. Like last year, you tore up the shrubs and to fix something, and then we didn't fix it up. Still tore up. And when the shrub, we have a shrub that dies or a tree that dies, replace it. Don't replace it with wood chips. That's what the city did for the last 10 years. And I talked about all those 10 years, took pictures every year. And I couldn't believe what happened those 10 years. The DDA paid a lot of money for those shrubs and the landscaping. That's our money. I think guys should do a better job. But like I said, leave it alone. Leave it as. Those guys deserved it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wendland. I saw another hand way in the back. Yes, ma'am? Oh, Laura, I apologize. I didn't recognize you.
I haven't been around recently. I'm Laura Harrison, and I'm a military wife. I have 5 family members that were in the military. 2 of them are left. My grandfather and my father and my brother are all gone. And I just don't want the Veterans Memorial moved again. It's in a beautiful place. I just want it left where it is. It means a lot to me. And I know it means a lot to a lot of other residents in the city. Okay, saying that, the one other thing, and I've been really busy the last 2 months, I did get a chance to kind of look at, and I watched the show last month or whenever you did. You need more grass. Too much cement. I mean, you know, it's a park. You need grassy area, and to remove it in front of the memorial, you don't need that big a space. And my major reason for that is too much concrete. You know what that brings? Bicyclers and skateboarders. And skateboarders damage property. If you haven't seen some of the things, we replaced an awful lot. But you can talk to Mr. Rassel. He'll tell you how much damage we've had in all our area around the library, because they go right off the steps of the library and right onto the grass. So what you need to do is narrow down these sidewalks. I don't think you need as wide a sidewalk walking from the parking lot to the library. I don't think you need that much cement. It's just a walkway. You need more grass so the kids can play. Things like that want to do. I don't think you need that much grass. I think the entrance to the park should be further down Troy Street, right? Further down, midway, closer to the front door of the new City Hall. That should be the main entrance to the park, down there. Move the crosswalk from the farmer's market area further down, and then you can have just a short walkway into the library, which I thought they had done the front door to being the main entrance of the library. That's what I had heard several months ago. So I don't know whether you've changed that or what, but supposedly the back door, which is the south door, was supposed to be closed, so I'm not sure. You know, and they could have changed it. It's, you know, I haven't paid that much attention. But you definitely need more grass and less concrete, definitely. Otherwise, you're going to be paying a lot more bills than you really need.
Thank you, Mrs. Harrison. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. London.
David London, 5132 Thorncroft Court. I'm not here to express my personal opinion. I'm here on behalf of the Veterans Events Committee with a few practical things that I wanted to bring up. I've seen quite a few of the renderings. They're beautiful. But one of the things that I have not seen that I just want to make sure that goes on the record is with the memorial, it requires flagpoles. So I haven't seen the inclusion of flagpoles with the memorial yet. So I don't know if that is part of the future plans or if that just simply wasn't part of the thing. So part of the, especially Memorial Day, when we're commemorating the people who have given their lives, the flagpoles themselves behind the memorial, whether they're behind or nearby, are integral to that. So I wanted to make sure that that was the case, and that, as some people have mentioned before, that because it's such a solemn place, that there is some sort of rise to it, that if it's at street level, people walk by, they nudge, and skateboarders, of course. But I do think anything that's done with it is going to be done with the utmost respect, but I did want to make sure that we have the flagpoles for the Memorial Day parade, or the Memorial Day ceremony, and I hope to see future renderings, so thank you very much.
Thank you. I saw other hands. Just way, way, way in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Tanae Logan, and Mr. Federley may have emailed you all some information that I provided to him earlier today. I have some hard copy handouts if any of you need them, if you didn't get the email.
Does anyone need hard copies of the email concerning the splash pad?
No, I read it. Good.
I read them both.
I think we've all got it.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to come before you and say a few words about why that is an area of concern for me as a mom of a 2-year-old and someone who has visited other similar types of water features and splash pads in the area, including places like in Sterling Heights at the Dodge Park, and seeing how some of their rules include needing, well, requiring for parents to take their children and change their diapers somewhere else before they can enter. And so that's just one thing that requires an adequate supply of restrooms and changing areas that would not be there if it was decoupled in terms of the construction scheduling. So that's one thing. Also, it just happened to be that while I was there, unfortunately, there was a public safety issue where a young boy went missing. And so the Sterling Heights Police had to be called to the scene, and that was partly because of the way that the area was not being well-staffed by those who were supposed to be dedicated to that area. So that's another just sort of example of the types of design issues with security and making sure that there are adequate bathrooms for public health and safety reasons. But since you all have gotten the email, I won't go over it in detail. I just ask that you please review that very, very carefully and give it your due consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other speakers? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mike Lineweber, 1704 Bassett, Royal Oak. Having watched the development of this project over some time, this is my personal feelings about the kind of the options and directions you're considering. From the Veterans Memorial aspect, and I've got family members that are veterans, my father and my uncle, but I do look at that veterans area and see if the original plan that was available to the designers that laid it out in the current fashion, if they had had the whole park and this whole opportunity for creating a respectful, solemn area, they would not have likely laid it out in a linear fashion as it is today. And so, you know, I think for really looking at the larger aspect of the park and creating a respectful space for the veterans, that looking at an alternative layout, as I think the design contemplates, is a good idea, as long as it's done respectfully. And I think that would be something that the original designers may have embraced had they had that option at the time. So, so on that, I would say, you know, look at what's the best long-term solution for the veterans in a respectful way, and I think that would be an important thing. Secondly, I think it's important on the park design to look at the edges, and we've heard about security and safety, but also looking at, how it approaches the library and the Henry Ford building, which I'm involved with, but, and the streetscape on the other sides. Those areas are very important, and so making sure that the park design is homogeneous with those, that there's not two distinctive patterns or designs, that they're all kind of working together, I think is very important as well. And then as far as the two options I saw that were candidates, personally, I like the option with the hill. I think it's got a creates opportunity for kids and diversity in how it's used. I think it's kind of exciting, but I understand budgets are an issue always, so, we'll see which way it goes, but that's my personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Mrs. Hennessy, is that you back there? Okay.
Carol Hennessy, representing the Royal Oak Memorial Society. First of all, I would like to state, some of you might not know, that the Memorial Society started this move back in 2002 to move the monument to a respectful place. For those of you that don't know, it used to be at the end of this walkway where Brugger's and Andiamo's was, so it was right there in the alleyway. And it was a very disrespectful spot. So I came to the city and asked them if we could move it, and they said, they gave me their blessing and said, we don't have any money, you need the money. You need to get the money to get it moved. So after 3 years of working hard, trying to get the money, trying to find the right location, we finally ended up where it is now. And after all of that, we found out that in the master plan, that was where they had decided to put it, but nobody had told us that at the time. So it's right where the master plan was at and where the rest of us wanted it to be. So I just can't see moving it from the entranceway to the library. It's the focal point of everybody that comes out of the library. And if you ever sat there and watched people come, families would walk out of the library and the kids would say, what is that? And so the parents would take them there and teach them what it was and talk to them about it. And it was very moving. And since then, we'll find notes, we'll find bouquets of flowers, we'll find a rose with a note attached, love you, Grandpa, or miss you, Dad, whatever. And it's very moving. We never had that over there. And so that's why I think it's in the perfect spot. By moving it 40 feet to the east, it's going to be a smaller area. And I was going to say about the metal electrical boxes out there, but those are going to be moved from what I understand. But right now, we use the stairs of the library for the bands or for choral groups, and it just makes a bigger, wider area for services or whatever you want to have there. Can I please ask for more time, because I'm going to run out. So anyway, I just wanted to say that to have a nice service, the area where it is now, it's cut out like this, so it's like in a half a circle, so there's more room for more people to be. When they move it over the 40 feet, it's just going to be a narrow area, and behind it is the bee flower nature center, so they're not going to be able to trample into there. And then you have the gun salute, which that takes up areas. Well, now, they usually did it along Troy Street. Well, people are going to be in that area. So that's kind of a mess. And for those of you that don't know, there were 7 names added to the monument when we moved it. I believe it was 5 people had been missing in action, and their bodies had not been found. Well, then, I guess they did find the bodies, and the parents were notified, but they never got the bodies. So when we moved the monument and we added the names, we invited these families, and it was a closure for them, and they felt very close to this monument because it was their loved one that was now on it that they weren't able to bury properly. They couldn't thank us enough, and they were so glad that they finally had a place that they could come and remember their loved one.
Mrs. Hennessy, can I ask you to wrap it up?
I'm trying, yeah,
Okay.
okay. And I don't believe you're honoring the veterans by moving it. I feel that it is just in the way, so they're moving it to the side. I know the park is important, but the park should have been done around the monument, and there could have been other ways to do it. And by not moving it, you're going to be saving over $100,000. And a bathroom is needed if you're having a splash pad with kids in a park. I mean, if you're a parent or a grandparent, you know you've got to have a bathroom. And so I believe that money could be used towards that. And that's just what I'd like to report.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Anyone else here this evening? Yes, I see another hand.
Hi, I'm Emily Dumas, 825 West Houstonia. I'm also here to represent the library. First of all, I just wanted to clear something up. In one of the comments earlier, it was said that we are closing the south entrance of the library, and that is not true. The south entrance will remain open. What we did just do is reopen our north entrance. So our 11-mile entrance opened for the first time since 2006. So just to clear that up, both entrances will remain open. I just also wanted to once again lend my support to the idea of installing a permanent restroom. I was thinking about it, and if we're going to be hosting evening events there, like I know there's talk of concerts and things, you'd have to consider that the buildings around there, what time they would be closed at. For instance, the library, on the weekends, we close at 6, so we would not have a restroom available for people. I know there's talk of telling people to use the farmer's market, but sometimes they're hosting private events, and I would assume that Henry Ford would also close earlier on those days. So just with that in mind, rather than constantly having to install porta potties, it may just be a better fit to have a permanent restroom there, as well as all the other good points raised tonight about the safety and sanitary issues that go with having a splash pad and then not having a bathroom for people to get ready in or to change in. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here this evening for public comment? No? Okay, we'll bring it back to the table. And under items of business, our first one, the task force decision on placement of the Veterans Memorial. Then there is a second one, decision on Glade A or Glade B, which is either the flat or the mounded design. And I'm going to add a C, at least to have a discussion about the restroom issue. We don't necessarily have to make a recommendation on that tonight. That's not in front of us, but I think enough issues have been brought forward about the restroom issue that we probably should have a discussion about it, so that if this gets transmitted to the City Commission after this meeting, they'll at least have the benefit of our thoughts about that issue on a going forward basis. I know that in both the budgets for both of these Glade options, there is not sufficient money for the restroom facility as it is. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean that we can't make comments and suggestions as to how that issue is going to be handled going forward. So I'm going to add that as an item subsection C to this agenda, and we'll get to that. So I think perhaps maybe the first and the easiest decision is the one that is B. I'm going to flip both A and B around, because I think we might be able to dispense with the task force decision on Glade A or Glade B relatively quickly. But then the discussion about the Veterans Memorial might take just a little bit more time. So unless there's any objections, I'm going to move forward, and we'll have a discussion on the choice of Glade A or Glade B. I should also point out that as we go through all of these things, both the Downtown Development Authority has discussed this project right immediately before our meeting, and they have input, which they will provide this evening. Also, Commissioner Douglas has sent us some very brief comments. And we also received comments from John McIntyre, who is our newest member of the task force, who is on vacation with his family, not able to attend this meeting, but he sent us detailed comments about all of these issues. So as we go through them, I will interject and throw in those as well, so that we all understand those additional comments as well. I don't know how many of you have received all of them, but we'll make sure that they're part of the record. So moving on to task force decision on Glade A or Glade B design. I don't know if anyone needs to take a look at the designs again. I believe that they're on the website. You're all fairly comfortable with the differences between the two. I know we also have representatives from our consultants here this evening. I don't know if they have any comments on this particular issue before we get into a discussion, or no.
Hill or no hill?
Excuse me?
Hill versus no hill? We don't have any comments on it.
Okay, okay, all right. All right, I will then open it up to the members of the task force. Perhaps we should get the comments from the DDA first and then go from there?
Sure. Do you want me just to address Glade A versus Glade B at this point in time?
Why don't you just, limit it to that?
Sure. So the DDA was in favor of Glade A, which has the raised hill. They thought that it provided some unique spaces. As mentioned, kids can play on it. It's a more exciting environment. And it's really as simple as that. They just preferred that.
Okay. The two comments that I received separate, both Mr. McIntyre and Commissioner Douglas also preferred Glade A. So we'll enter that as part of the record as well. Any other comments from members of the task force on this issue? Commissioner DeBuck. Oops, I'm sorry. I saw Commissioner DeBuck's hand first.
Sure. Glade A is my preference, but actually I do somewhat, I identify with the comment about the amount of concrete. I think the fundamental differences between A and B that I like the hill. I like the positioning of the War Memorial. I'm not clear on the necessity of having the walkway cut through the glade in a way that it doesn't in Glade B. And I guess I'm curious, are we, in making a decision tonight, all in on one or the other, or can we still mix elements of these things, or that could be done at the commission table?
Perhaps that's a question for the consultants, because that's a pretty fundamental issue in terms of the location of the walkway that goes through Glade A. Do we need to actually make a decision on that specifically tonight, or can we tweak it later on? Okay.
So if I could add just a couple things, because you brought it up. The DDA did mention maybe possibly shrinking down the walkway. Let's say that we keep the walkway that connects 3rd Street to the entrance of the library that basically bisects the site, possibly shrinking that a little bit to get a little bit more green space, so that was mentioned. But the DDA at the infrastructure and at the board likes that walkway that you just mentioned, because they really liked how it would connect 3rd Street and the center of downtown and end up right at the front door of the library, giving it prominence. So that was something that, both the full board of the DDA and infrastructure committee really, that's why they recommended that.
Okay. Mr. Arvin.
So Glade A is my preferable option, but with regards to the path, that north-south walkway is probably going to be a passageway where people will cut across there anyhow. This was brought up before, and so there will be a dirt path through there, if not a paved path. But it also intersects with the question of the memorial and how that relates to the path. And so I think we'll have to discuss the path once we talk about the memorial as well.
Commissioner DeBuck?
Yeah, I guess I would just add then, I agree from like a human design perspective, people are gonna cut through that route anyway, so it may be inevitable, but as far as maximizing green space, and there is the comment about adding a little bit more green space near where the War Memorial is, so maybe we can put, patch of grass as opposed to just paver stones surrounding the memorial, just to create more green. I just wanna maximize the amount of green that we're seeing here, in spite of the need for functionality, right? Or to, cooperate, coincide with the functionality of it.
Okay. Yes.
I also am supporting Glade A. I think in the last presentation, that walkway was so wide. There was mention of bringing food trucks in that way, and I don't know if there's any other real design purpose for that being that wide. I would surely support thinning that walkway to bring in more green space. So we could certainly bring food trucks into different areas. And yeah, that's it.
Okay.
I also prefer A. One, I don't feel strongly about the width of the sidewalk, but certainly during half the year, people won't be on the green space, and it won't be green, it will be brown. So a wider path might allow in the winter more opportunity for people to still spend time in the park, because you just don't go on the grass today. You wouldn't. But I'm not sure exactly how wide it is, just looking at the picture.
Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner DeBuck.
So I would just note that as far as the east-west walkway goes, I think one of our longstanding ideas for the activation of this park is to line that pathway with farmers market booths in the warmer months. And so I think that's informing the width of that walkway as well, which is in one of our slides here.
Any other comments from the task force? I will just add that my preference also is Glade A, with a couple of caveats. Number one, we've discussed in terms of the environmental impacts of this park, the use as much as possible of using permeable pavement as opposed to hard concrete pavement when we can. And so that will give us some opportunities to soften some of these areas where we want a pathway, but in some ways, depending upon what materials are available and the cost, we could make them permeable to have a softer impact and not a hard concrete pathway all the way through. The second thing is that it's my understanding that in terms of the actual location and the width of the sidewalks as they're presented in the plan, those are conceptual and we can tweak those as well. Depending upon final decision on what various areas will be used for. We can, for example, significantly narrow the pathway that would run in front of the library if we thought that more green space was appropriate there. Or we could widen another pathway along either Troy Street or in front of Henry Ford if we thought that that was appropriate for whatever might be going through there, more pedestrian traffic or whatever. So the widths of those concrete areas can be tweaked as we make decisions going forward, minor decisions going forward. But I think what the designers are looking for is a basic conceptual plan. And the big difference in my mind between these two is whether or not it's a flat space, which is Glade B, or whether there is one that has a grade to it in the middle, which is Glade A, which is my preference, and I think everyone else's preference as well. Just because the change in the topography is another natural element that adds visual interest to the park. So that's kind of where we are in terms of this decision. I'm going to ask staff, are you looking to us for an actual formal motion on this, or are you just getting, oh yeah, we are, okay. All right, all right.
Take the Monday nights.
Do I need to actually say my preference?
I'm sorry,
No, that's okay.
I didn't see your hand.
Nope, I didn't raise my hand and I was just kind of sitting here, so I didn't know if I need to go on record. I also prefer Glade A for a lot of the reasons that have already been mentioned. I think it provides a lot more, I heard in the task force for the AARP about having an adult park, and I think that this adds that element to the city because they were looking for some more adult spaces. I do like the boulder climb. I think that helps give the kids something naturally to do without adding play equipment and things like that. So I wasn't sure, is the stage permanent, Andy? Sorry.
Yes,
Okay, that stage would be permanent.
yeah, I mean, it's a platform,
Okay.
and it's not a stage.
And the only other thing that I have heard from comments that I've heard is, are we going to have a tree here that we can use for the Christmas? So that would be something you want to put in your design. We need some tree in here to decorate. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Perhaps a menorah.
Yes, and a menorah. I don't, like, we can put that on the stage, but I felt it would be very clear we needed to have a Christmas tree in the park.
Okay. All right, then, since the staff would strongly prefer us that we actually have a motion on this particular issue, is anyone willing to put forth a motion?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll make a motion that the task force recommends Glade A versus Glade B.
Okay. We have a motion and support. Any discussion on that motion? Any additional discussion?
I would like to add your comments about making sure that the motion is relative to the sloping hill, and the details are not part of that approval, the rest of the details.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Okay, now we move on to item dealing with the replacement of the Veterans Memorial. There again, I'm just going to indicate what the comments are from Mr. McIntyre and Commissioner Douglas. Both of them would recommend moving the memorial to a more respectful place. Let me see if I can read Mr. McIntyre's comments because they're a little bit more detailed. He says, I'm in favor of moving the memorial. The park needs to benefit the entire community. If moving it slightly increases the utility of park dynamics, it just makes sense. That said, we need to be mindful of any change, relocation, that it doesn't become a concrete pad for additional play skateboarding, as someone has indicated so far, or something other than the intended purpose of remembrance to those that gave the ultimate sacrifice. So those were Mr. McIntyre's comments on the topic. Also, we probably should hear about the Downtown Development Authority, if they spoke to this issue.
We did. And the DDA was in favor of moving the War Memorial. And the reasons why, I think it was mentioned tonight, was that if you were to look at the park holistically, what would be the best place for it? They also said that now that, let's say that it is decided to relocate it, the park designers would hopefully work with those who are in charge of the War Memorial, the Veterans Memorial, to make sure it's still designed in a respectful way, and potentially it could be even better space. So bottom line is, our vote was to relocate it if it worked best for the overall design of the park.
Okay. All right, any other comments from the task force on the relocation of the memorial?
Yeah, I can say, I agree. I'm kind of aligned with what the DDA's comments are, that I think currently, if we left it where it is, it's not going to be in that respectful, like, kind of reflective place that it's gonna be. I agree that we should work with to make sure that we keep it in that intent and really work with the designers to create that space for it. So I'm in favor of moving it to create the space that it deserves and give people the reflection place that they want for it. So if that means more grass or however we need to design it, I would encourage us to work with the Veterans Memorial and the design team to make that space what they want.
There was a comment too by one of the directors, said that, you know, when you see the rendering where the War Memorial remains as is, but then the park's designed around it, he felt that it might be, he used the words, you know, ran over, like kids would go up and down. It wouldn't be respected. And I thought that was a good point. So it echoes exactly what you're saying. And you now have the ability to put it in a space where it's its own environment and people can reflect. So the whole goal is to be as respectful and beneficial to the Veterans Memorial as possible.
And I think creating a space to it does it more honor than having it in the middle of a park where it's not going to have that the intent is going to be lost.
I think I agree with all the speakers who were opposed to moving that. I understand you did move it from an area because it was not respected. The area that that's in currently, will, as everyone up here has said, will no longer be respected. That's going to be the entryway to the park. I understand your concerns, and I do think moving it would provide a much more reverent area for that memorial. And I think that's the intent of the memorial. I think you would probably agree with that as well. Yeah. So.
Commissioner DeBeck.
Yep, I agree. I think those comments are spot on, and I think that the intent here in moving it is to not just have the war memorial be in the park, but for it to be in a place. So it's the difference between the war memorial being a thing in the park versus the war memorial being a place in the park. And the way that this is laid out is it's very much a space designed for the war memorial and people that want to come and pay their respects.
Any other comments?
I also agree. I think where it is today, as the area is laid out today, is probably the most special place it could be in the downtown area. But once everything behind it and around it has changed, it no longer will be. So by moving it, it will be a more peaceful place to visit.
Any other comments? Yes?
Just about the flagpoles, I don't know, we've had that conversation, but it's a good note that we need to make sure that the landscaping is laid out such that we can have the flagpoles there.
I'm assuming that the location for the flagpoles would be coordinated along with the memorial, wherever that decision happens to be.
Yes.
We're not going to, the flagpoles will remain someplace, probably very close to the memorials, wherever the memorials end up. So,
One final thing. It does seem that the War Memorial hasn't been focused on enough at this point, and that this is the opportunity right now to make sure that it is given its due respect, and it is made, and in the design of the area around it is accommodates the activities that typically go on there. And I don't think that probably has been focused on enough. And so whether it stays there or whether it moves, it seems if it moves, it can have a much better space than it currently has now. The space is, as it is, doesn't look very respectful, and it doesn't look very solemn. And by focusing on it a little bit more, and the designers honing in on it with people that are involved with that memorial would make sure that it would work much better.
okay. Yes?
One more thing. It was mentioned about when there are things that occur there, how people will line up on the steps, and there's concern about the amount of space. I would ask the designers to speak with Mrs. Hennessy or whoever it may be to look at the size and make sure that the size is adequate, right? I can't tell from this picture if this is larger or smaller than what exists. And I know that with the renderings, it's always very deceptive. So I think that's something that we need to plan for and make sure that, it's sized adequately, that's all.
I think that's a good point. Both of these are good points.
I do appreciate everyone bringing it forward to highlight it and make it more of a focus as we think about it going forward. I think everyone that comes and voices an opinion gives us the perspective of things to consider and how we should be approaching this as a team and what we should be focused on and giving it the space that it deserves. I think we'll be happier in the long run. So I appreciate the opportunity to hear from people that have been involved and hear that history to know how we should be focusing on it.
Any other comments? I'll just comment very briefly that I agree that I think moving it to the east is probably the best way to take care of it and honor it going forward. Because when I look at the design, if it remains where it is, it's going to be in a pathway that is going to be linking one side of the park to the other, also to the parking structure and also to Henry Ford. And I don't think you want a pedestrian highway going right by it and right around it. It's hard to imagine the memorial in a setting different than what it exists now, because right now it is surrounded by landscaping, there's buildings behind it, and it looks very sheltered, and it looks very sheltered because there's trees there. But most of that stuff is going to go away when the park is under construction and as the new design is put into place. And so it's going to be sitting out there independently all by itself. And I think that's just a real recipe for potential damage and disrespect to the monument in leaving it where it is and having everything else designed around it. I think moving it to a designated area with the design concept in mind that we want to make it a more respectful place, a safe place, that is the appropriate way to honor the efforts that have been put into this project up to this point. There is space for it. It's in the dedicated space that was set aside in 2006 by the city for Veterans Memorial. It's not moving out of that 30 or 40-foot space. It's just moving east, if this is the final decision. And I think the goal of putting it into a very respectful place out of a lane of traffic is the best way to do it. So I'm in agreement with the rest of the task force. I'm assuming you also want us to make a motion and a hard decision on this as well. So, Ms. Kinninger's.
I have one more question.
One more question.
Could that memorial be one of the first things moved to a spot during construction, just so it's still accessible and available to people who want to go there? Or is it going to be closed off for the entire construction process?
I think that's something we'll have to work on with the selected contractor. I mean, we can make it a priority, and, I don't see why it couldn't, but I don't want to make that promise right now. I'm not sure the utilities and things that need to, we've got possible things
No, that's fair,
underground,
definitely
so,
fair. Thank
yeah.
you.
I think that'd be a long shot to.
I would hope we could, though.
Well, I think you are seeing that it's a priority for us as well as the city, so I think that's something you can carry forward as you can work with other contractors.
We can write that in the RFP, that that's part of the staging.
Okay.
Yeah, there's going to be an awful lot of activity in a very small space. Not only the initial remediation of these existing buildings, which is a project in and of itself, but then also the demolition, and then ultimately the construction. So there's 3 different phases of activity that have the potential of damaging the existing memorial structure, which is all going to have to be considered. And as well as, if Memorial Day is in the middle of that, where do you have the ceremony in front of the memorial? So those are all logistical issues that we're all going to have to pay attention to and do our best to make it work out as best we can. But I think just being all aware of them on a going forward basis, not only from the staff perspective, but also from the Memorial Society perspective and the public's perspective, if we can all keep it at the top of our heads, then it'll work out. It'll work out. It might be a little dusty, but it'll work out. Okay. Did we have
Yes.
Ms. Kittinger had a motion?
Create a motion to propose to move the Veterans Memorial to the new designated space. Again, working with the design team to create an intentional space for reflection and things like that to make sure that that's a priority in our design going forward.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and it's more than just, we approve, moving. It's also, you must consider these very important things that we've mentioned. Creating a respectful space and working with the Memorial Society on a going forward basis so that we consider space considerations and turf considerations and so on and so forth.
Flagpoles.
With,
Flagpoles.
yes,
Flagpoles, yes.
as to all of those aspects of that.
We did some updates there.
Did you put in the flagpoles? Cool.
A picture.
I'm sitting on that side next to you.
Oh, yes, there. Flagpoles are right behind the memorial, and the picture in the slide show the actual memorial itself with the landscaping behind it.
That's nice.
With this plan, it has the flagpoles right behind it as well.
It's beautiful.
It is.
And again, to your point, I think working with a group to design that space, that's a placeholder. Moving the memorial is less than we anticipated, cost-wise.
I was going to make that point, yes.
Yes, and so we're going to try to reserve that rest of that line item in there so that we can apply that to improvement of that space. So that would be something as we get into the project, we'd like to have a group that's focused on designing of this space.
It would be great.
Andy, I have a quick question for you. When you got the quote to move the war memorial, did they physically go see it? The reason I ask is because it's been repaired over time. So I want to make sure that, that they have an understanding of that, when they're quoting a number.
They
that
did.
There's potential,
We reached out to 5 different companies. 2 of them went actually out to the site and physically observed the condition of it. They both observed that there's a hairline crack that runs through the base, the foundation. One even gave us a quote to replace that piece of granite if we wanted to make it whole again.
Right.
So we've got money in the budget to do that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
I believe that the number that you emailed to us, there was an estimate from those companies that, as opposed to the six-figure estimate that you had originally, it was about $25,000 to move, and perhaps $25,000 additionally if we needed to replace a cracked piece of granite as opposed to just moving it as is.
Yeah, I mean, the bill for the 2006, including everything, and that ranges from general conditions, to survey, that was $153,000. The actual relocation of the monument was $15,000. That's in 2006. The numbers we're getting today, which are pretty similar from the 2 that we've gotten numbers back for so far, it's $25,000. So that's, and prices
It's
from
about typical with
2006 to now.
escalation in
Yeah.
construction right now.
Yeah, so, so we've, and a lot of these other numbers that were in the 2006, we've already got that covered in the rest of the estimate for the rest of the project.
Right. So we're just looking at literally the relocation, not the rest of the stuff that goes along with it.
Right.
Yeah.
But we did put more, to my point earlier, we put more money in the budget to relocate it because we had thought it was a lot more. Our goal is to keep a huge chunk of that so that we can apply it to the improvements of the space around it.
Around it.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve moving the memorial with plenty of conditions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Okay, this brings us down to item C that was added, the restroom issue. Just a little bit of discussion about that. A point that should be made is that it's clear from the design and the drawings in the park that this is not going to be another splash park per se. At most, there will be 8 or 10 water jets coming out of a very small area, and it's not designed to be another water park. The new water park for the city is going to be up at Normandy Oaks. This is more of a water feature as opposed to an invitation for toddlers to run around and play all day. That said, we really appreciate the information that was brought forward about safety issues and so on, considerations when you have a feature like this as part of your park. So there were a couple of other members of the task force that had comments about the restroom issue that I just heard informally. I don't know if you want to express those this evening or whether you want to make some suggestions to the city commission that will consider this ultimately as to how we feel about the restroom issue. Mr. Arvin?
I would like to hear Andy's thoughts on how this has been done in other communities where they've had this scale of water feature / splash element, to see if there's been issues brought up in other communities, if you have any experience with that.
Yes, we've got both examples, water features, and we're not talking splash pads. We typically, with the flowers that dump water down, that's for its own space, and I think you guys have got plenty of those in town right now. This is a water feature that you can run through, but it's not necessarily a splash pad. That said, the reality is that there will be families there using the space, and like all little kids are, is in the most inconvenient time, they've got to use the restroom. And if you have other kids, you usually have to drag them with you if the restroom is far away. So having some place to use the restroom to change, or if an accident occurs, having that is a convenience. So we would recommend that, I think, and we talked about it last time we were here, is to, at a minimum, put the utilities there, stub those so that it can be put in at a future date. Right now, we've got a contingency in the project that's fairly healthy, and then my intention is not to use that just as additional cost to absorb somewhere with, gold-plated whatever. I think we need to utilize that and save it so that we can prepare a bid alternate with the restroom and that can possibly be afforded within the base price or the phase one of the project.
So just to make sure I understand it, you say that there's probably enough in the budget, in the contingency, to at least put in, I'm assuming, underground plumbing, that kind of thing for a potential restroom in the future?
Right.
Or, okay. And so it would also mean that if we designated a location in the park design, that could be done on a going forward basis, and you think the budget
And
would be...
we have identified a
one.
location for it.
Yeah, there is.
And so that's where the utilities would, because we've got the architects on board to design the restroom, so that'll already be taken care of. And like I said, we will prepare that, so as part of the bid package, that will be an alternate, we'll get pricing for it.
Okay.
And if pricing comes in favorably, then we'll include the restroom in the construction of the project.
Okay.
Where is it located again, Andy?
It's right here. I can pass these down. I printed it off for you.
The west of the water, the
Got it.
pop jets.
Right where you would want it.
Right.
Next to the front.
Right.
You got them?
Right next to the water feature.
Yeah.
Comments, restroom comments. Commissioner DeBuck?
I think it's just my lack of imagination looking at this beautiful design. I just keep picturing a brick cinder block rectangle sitting in the middle of our beautiful park. Assume there's a way to design a restroom that fits in with the style and beauty that was
Absolutely. No,
created here.
I would cringe to have a, cinder block
Right.
building there. So we've got, right now in our conceptual drawings, which I can share with you guys very soon, it's more like a glass tile. It's not opaque, or it's not transparent or translucent, it's opaque, but they're oriented vertically, and it's a range of greens, the colors. So it does kind of blend in with all the green foliage and vegetation that surrounds the park. And it's got some curved walls that kind of overlap each other to create the openings. I mean, it's sculptural in nature as well, so that's something that we were pushing for.
Okay.
The size of it, it'll fit well within that space. We're looking at basically one family restroom where there's maybe, changing station and space to change some clothes if you need to in there, but we're not looking at multiple toilets or anything like that.
That was my next question, because I think the real pressing case to get it done sooner is the special event angle, and that we don't want a permanent row of porta potties in our beautiful new park. But I don't know that one
It's gonna make a
family
difference.
bathroom's going to alleviate that anyway.
Right.
So.
It's just going to be for emergencies.
Yeah, it's for more daily convenience. As soon as you
Right.
talk about festivals or even just small concerts, the number of those toilets grows pretty quickly.
Right.
And so does the price.
Right.
Question. Maybe this is for Mr. Rassel. How's that serviced? Is it, how's it, taken care of on a hourly, daily basis? Or, I'm just curious. Is that?
We have other ones in other parks.
Yeah, we would have a daily contractor come by
Okay.
and clean it.
Got it.
Obviously, if something happened in the middle of the day, it might be closed until we get it cleaned up for the next day. And then the other parallel track or whatever, the farmer's market is interested in adding on a restroom building in the southwest corner, which would have an inside-outside access, because they are taxed out bathroom-wise. Obviously, when you've been to special events at the market, when they have larger events, they have the same porta-john issue, and they would like to get out of that business as well. So it may be one of those things, depending on the speed of that project, it may be an either or kind of thing, that decision that can be made at a later time as far as where, stub the utilities for the park, and you make a decision
Right.
next winter, says, well, the farmer's market's pursuing that, let's go that way and forget the park, or vice versa. Kill one that project's too far in the future, or too big a pipe dream, we need to pursue the park angle.
I like that idea. Stubbing things in is pretty inexpensive, right? It's not a
Yeah.
big deal. And if the farmer's market does, go down that road and add that on, I mean, I actually like that a lot more because you're going to get more restrooms. It's an actual restaurant facility versus something in our parks.
Right.
Like thinking that a permanent row of permanent porta-johns is not in our future. So I like that there's an alternate to that reality.
Right.
I think my recommendation is at least to put the utilities there
Absolutely.
for the
Yeah,
future.
Absolutely.
Maybe this becomes such a huge draw that we have to consider it regardless of the farmer's market, but having that there, I think we should at least recommend that piece of it, whether we actually build the building or not, I think can be decided later based on some other things that are happening in the city. But I think it's important to plan for it.
I mean, I would say that I hear Ms. Dumas's concerns, and I agree with her. The library, I don't think, should be charged with becoming the restroom facility for the park.
I agree with
And I
that.
think
No, I
that's
think we all agree.
going to happen. And if there's maybe a way that we could rework things and get that restroom in phase one, I don't know if it's possible or not, or where we could adjust things. But I think my recommendation would be to have that restroom built with the park itself.
Okay. I think the potential is there for not only the library to be impacted by that, but when they're open, also Henry Ford, which is even closer in some ways to the water feature than the library, or Lockhart's, or City Hall, if it's during a weekday. I can see people running in a whole lot of different directions looking for a restroom close by if there's not a facility in the park or close by in a public area like a rebuilt one for the farmer's market. So I think definitely that's something, it's an issue we can't ignore.
No.
We have to deal with it some way or another.
And we may decide that one family restroom there makes sense regardless of what happens in the farmer's market because of just convenience of like you have 3 kids and you can't take the whole family, cart them off over there. I mean, so it may make sense. I think we all agree that having something there would be ideal, but understand that that may not be in the budget. So I think, I mean, I don't know.
Phase 2.
What?
Phase 2.
Right.
Mr. Rassel.
The intent always was at a minimum to stub into the bathrooms.
Right.
We are gonna do a bid alt, put an actual number on the restroom.
Okay.
See where we're at budget-wise, and make that decision at that time. Either we need to find additional money, or defer, we're gonna go a different route, or whatever. But the intention was always to put a number on it as an alternate.
Okay. That would be amazing.
What an honor.
The other thing that we could regulate as well, not only the restroom issue, but also the water feature itself. If it turns out that we really don't think the water feature should be going on a regular basis because it's attracting too many kids and too many kids looking for restrooms, then we just don't run the water feature except on special occasions. Or, we just don't leave it, we keep it not operational until we get the facilities in place that we think we need. But we can certainly build it and have it available for whenever we think we're ready to turn it on. But we don't have to have it turned on constantly if we don't have the facilities to support it. So we can work at it from that end as well.
Yeah, and the programming of that, you're exactly right. I think I would tend to have it on more at the beginning and just sort of gauge how the usage is. And then the technology for these things, there's a range. You can have a lever that you turn it off, or you can do it on your iPhone. So these are things that we'll need to look at when we start to look at the water feature itself. Yeah.
I'm familiar with a water feature in a municipal park in Stratford, Ontario. It's a concrete platform right behind their city hall. It's about the size, maybe half the size of what this park is going to be. And it has, I think, maybe 8 or 10 jets that come up, just not very high, maybe 5 feet at most. But they don't have it on all the time. It only comes on maybe once an hour or once every half hour during the summer months. And sometimes kids are playing in it and sometimes they're not. And sometimes people are just sitting there watching it. There are no public restroom facilities anywhere near it. And parents will either bring a towel and wrap up the kids and cart them off into the car, or they don't let them close to it. So, there are other water features in the world that don't have public restroom facilities right next door to them, and they function just fine. So But it's a matter of regulating the water feature itself, I think. So, Commissioner DeBuck.
Just that I think that's important to know that we have that in our toolbox if need be, but I think the intent of the feature is also just as an aesthetic feature, so my hope would be that we're able to leave it on to the greatest extent possible to just enhance the feeling of the park and the aesthetic of the park, yeah.
I think that one in hand lights with it, I think that would be a really nice touch for like some of these outdoor activations that we're thinking about, to be able to feature that, so.
We want something like Lincoln Center, you know, the light-up fountain in Lincoln Center?
And we'd like it to, with music and all that kind of stuff. Work your magic, Andy, for, least amount.
Do you need a formal motion on this topic?
On this one, I do not, because we're gonna bring your bid.
You're gonna bid it out
alternate back
anyway.
And bid it out, and we'll make that decision when we award the construction contract.
Okay. Okay.
I have one last thought on the restroom, and I keep looking at Commissioner DeBuck's screen over here, and he's got a picture of the ice rink. And seems to me that ice rinks and bathrooms go hand in hand because of the winter time. And so I'm wondering if the bathroom structure doesn't become something more at some point in the future where there's a place for putting your skates on and so forth. So building a minimal bathroom right now, when it's possible there might be more activity and there might be need for a larger structure that does more things, might be something that would happen in the future. So, last thought.
Okay, that's a good point. Any other discussion items on the bathroom issue? Restroom issue? No? Okay, then you've gotten a sense of kind of where we're going with this, and you're going to go forward with it. So thank you for all of your input on that. Items not on the agenda, is there, Commissioner DeBuck?
And we had a speaker on behalf of the library board tonight, and I'm just curious, because there's a lot of the design fronting the library, like to what extent have they been engaged, have they been presented with this, and are supportive of the elements that are, right adjacent to the library?
Isn't the stuff right adjacent to the library, phase 2?
It's not, so we have time to solicit their input and discuss with them phase 2 before going forward.
That's what I understood, right, Andy? You said the library piece, all the covering and all that was phase 2. That is not included in our.
That's correct, yeah, and I don't know if you have our PDF from the previous presentation, I think towards the end, we had a diagram that showed what was phase 1 and phase 2.
Phase 1 included like the garden, like the butterfly garden was included, but the rest of the library stuff was not, the way I understood.
And the pavilion feature.
Yeah.
Were not, but I talked to Ms. DeMoss after the last meeting, and one of the things we want to do is put together a little brochure that shows what the vision of that is with some cost, so that's something that she can have to begin talking to other folks with.
It's a great idea.
Perfect. Okay.
Any other discussion items or items to come before this task force tonight? No? Mr. Rassel, what is the next step? Is this going to go now to the city commission, I would assume?
Yes, ma'am, we're gonna draft up a summary of tonight's meeting and present this to the commission at the, hopefully, the January 27th meeting.
25th?
Wherever that might
Whatever
be.
the date is.
The
At the end of
fourth Monday.
Okay. Okay,
That is the next plan there.
okay. All right, thank you.
Do we need to meet again anytime soon? I thought we were getting a 60% update, so do we need to schedule another meeting?
We do not at this time.
Okay.
Because the step, once we get approval from the city commission, they will design specs,
Okay.
get something out to bid, and then we will probably convene to go over construction award.
I would think also that if the city commission is interested in pulling together a committee to assist with the design of the War Memorial, that it would be, they would be the ones that would have the authority to do that, if they wanted to do that, not us. So that's something that might come up at that meeting as well.
At the meeting on the 27th?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes. Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, so we know what's going to happen next. We're not dissolved. This is just kind of where we are now. And we'll see what the city commission says, and then we'll go forward. Okay. Anything else to come before this task force this evening? If not, then I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, second by Mr. Arvin. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you very much all for coming, and good night.